What's the pettiest reason why you didn't go on a second date? She didn't believe me when I explained how centuries are counted. I told her that the 19th century is the 1800s, and she asked how does that work, so I explained how the years 100 are the first century, the years 101-200 are the second century, and so on. Her response? Nah, you're having me on. Baby, if you can't understand zero index, you're not a match for my computer science butt. Not sure if this counts, but I ruined any shot I had at a second date because I found out the girl had a fear of spoons and couldn't stop asking questions about it. This person was a perfect storm of mispronunciations that drive me to distraction, especially something else, Chipotle, irregardless, and Pacifically all in one date. I thought I was being head on, but nope. Checked out his FB and he was even worse at words online. Not petty at all. I'm fighting murderous urges just from reading that. Met online and after chatting back and forth for a while decided to meet IRL. His voice was a way higher pitch than I expected it to be and it completely caught me off guard. I couldn't get over it. Second date never happened. She told me she was an artist. Genuinely interested, I asked if she was a musician, painter, sculptor, actor. She laughed and said, I'm a sculptor. I always wanted to paint, but I've never been good at drawing. I thought it was a mistake, but after hearing her say it a few more times, any interest I had was gone. That is right up there with people who pronounce it drawing. She asked me to take her to the local amusement park and then let me know she didn't do rides once we got there. I would have loved to take her literally anywhere else, until that date. She told me that she randomly dropped little lies into most conversations to see whether or not people were paying attention. She did it throughout the entirety of the first date, and at first it was kinda funny. Stuff like, oh yeah, I served celebrity the other day, but by the end of it it got really tedious. I can only imagine it would also get exhausting in a relationship. Sounds like a pathological liar who gives herself an excuse in case she gets caught out. Was really excited when this really handsome, very nice, super smart guy asked me out in college. Took me out for a really nice dinner. Totally wanted to make out with him, and had the opportunity on a pleasant walk late that night. Only problem, he smelled like baby powder and chocolate chip cookies. One or the other, maybe, but those aromas together made him smell like a baby and I just couldn't even imagine trying to make out with him again. I felt bad not returning his calls, but I was young and didn't know what to say that wouldn't hurt his feelings. I laughed so hard at this. After the baby powder and chocolate chip cookies line I was like, okay, this guy sounds great, where's the frick up? I guess on a first date that's not a great smell combo. I went on a date with a guy who constantly mouth breathed louder than the show we watched. He was super nice. I just couldn't do it. Met this amazing girl on Tinder. Beautiful with a bright personality and a great sense of humor. I met up with her at a bar but she said she was running a little late. A few minutes later a woman walked in and sees me and waves. I see this and glance at her not knowing who this person is or why she is waving at me. Oh, maybe she sees someone behind me. Look behind me and there is no one around. It dawns on me. This is my date and I have been catfished. To qualify, her photos on her profile weren't 10 years old or anything. The photos were of a completely different person. I try to keep my composure while she sits down. Hey, it's so great to finally meet you. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Did you honestly think lying was going to be a great way to start this? She looks down and sees heavily. Okay, I know you are upset and it's okay if you want to leave, but the only reason why I used other pictures for my profile is because I am afraid no one will think I am pretty enough to go out with. Maybe, and this is a big maybe, if you stop lying to people on dating apps, then maybe you could find someone. I'm going to leave now. I like the straight up yet civilized way you handled that. Good job. He was studying to be an orthodontist and would not stop commenting on how great he thought my teeth were. They were nice comments, but come on, dude. It was starting to feel like the creepy beginnings of a movie about a serial killer with a tooth fetish. He was a nice guy, but I was so turned off by his love for teeth that I couldn't do a second date. Sounds like he was completely enamored with you. He told me he loved dank memes and then showed me a rage comic. He also used the word doggo unironically. There was clearly no future there. On a different date, a guy rejected my offer to pay for a bagel and then spent the next 10 minutes explaining why he didn't mind paying for a $4 bagel due to his meticulous financial planning. Listen baby, I got bagel money. She had a laugh like a hyena that suddenly had a stick shoved up its ass. Like an intense shrill laugh followed by ending on a sharp high-pitched yelp. It was a natural laugh. I couldn't deal. I homebrew. She asked to try one of my beers and I told her that it was a double IPA and she might not like it. She previously told me she hated hoppy beers. She told me it was delicious but I caught her pouring the beer down the sink. If you don't like it, fine. But tell me so maybe I can drink it and not waste something I put time and effort into. 30 minutes into our first date this guy asked me what my favorite movie was so I said, basically anything Tarantino has made. He proceeded to go on a rant saying Tarantino's movies were crap. How was it possible for me to like them, and that they don't make sense? He then said his favorite movies were Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2. The date was over before it even started tbh. I mean Kung Fu Panda is a great film. 2 experiences come to mind. 1. He kept making car noises. Not the occasional car noise, I'm talking full-blown rally car race noises for at least 40% of the date. He made car noises while we were in his car and it made its own noises. 2. He told me he had a boner. Beer squeal broom hey I have a boner me wa bro. Not sure if petty or not, went on a blind date. At some point the girl started saying when we have kids, you have to tell them we met when you saved me from a burning house. I was a firefighter at the time. That line was just too much for me so I bailed on her. She kept trying to call and text me, but thankfully about a week later my phone was destroyed on a fire call. When you have kids you have to tell them you saved that phone from a burning house. He wouldn't stop talking about himself or the biofuel research he was doing for his PhD, and didn't ask me any questions. After a few long awkward silences I decided to ask him questions about himself to keep those awkward silences from going longer. At some point I mentioned that I'm half Korean half white and that my parents met in Ansong, South Korea and we lived there for another year after I was born. He finally stopped talking about himself after 2 hours and asked about my nationality. I didn't mind, but then he asked, "Oh, are you adopted?" It was clear he hadn't listened to me at all. Bye, Felicia. Conversations are ping pong. If someone steals the ball the game is over. We drove to the restaurant separately. I had already kinda decided it wouldn't have a future, but we decided to go back to my place to have drinks anyway. I gave him my address in case we got separated on the way there. Yeah, he just went home, which would have been fine, but the sucker had grabbed both our leftovers when we left the restaurant. He took the rest of my calzone. That story and ending made me LOL. Thank you. She raved about a particular curry restaurant from one of the first conversations we had. I'd never heard of it, but she talked about it as though it was the best restaurant in the city. Naturally, I took her there on our first date. She was noticeably shy and quiet when we got there. I picked her up. I knew her fairly well before our date, so I knew it was very unlike her to be nervous and extremely unlike her to be quiet shy. She let me do all the ordering again, very unusual. Once the food got there, she took a few bites very reluctantly, then excused herself to use the restroom. She was in there for a while, and when she came back she only played with the food on her plate and didn't eat another bite. She admitted later that she only said she liked the place because a friend at work said it was good. She hates curry. When I told her how much I liked it when we first started talking about it, she was too polite to say anything and just hoped it would go away. That night at the restaurant when she was in the bathroom, she was trying not to throw up. Maybe this doesn't count as petty, but I don't want to date someone who can't or won't say that they hate the type of food that gets picked for a restaurant. I'm a go with the flow kind of guy. If she didn't like that place, I would have happily taken her somewhere else. Not saying she didn't like the type of food a restaurant served isn't that bad, but actively raving and talking about a place that she has never been to and doesn't like that type of food is just stupid and annoying. Not petty at all. He chewed with his mouth open. loudly. I don't even know if this counts as petty since it's making me mad even remembering it. Nope, 10/10 not petty, it's called not being a farm animal. First date. Talked about the names of our kids, how many we would have, our vacation area, wedding plans and also the honeymoon. Said her first time she wanted a BDSM dungeon style thing with leather and whips. Ghost protocol engaged. Man, you started off serious there. I went on a date once when I was 19 where the girl suggested we might transfer to the same university and thought she was moving too fast. He spilled ice cream on his shirt and didn't change before coming on the date. I wouldn't even have noticed if he hadn't pointed it out. I changed out of my jeans into a dress and he couldn't change out of his stained clothes. Also, the movie we saw was Kill Your Friends. The film was alright but not first date material. She was supposed to pick me up, but instead went right to the bar and told me to walk over to meet her, which is fine, as it was only like a 10-minute walk, but it was raining B. We were meeting some of her friends and I didn't wanna show up alone and see. What the frick, lady, if you say you're gonna do something then fricking do it. She then proceeded to get heinously drunk and projectile vomit in the bathroom within an hour of my arrival. One of the girls took her home, leaving me with the rest of her friends all night, none of whom I had met before that evening. The night actually turned out to be really fun, and I still talk to a bunch of the people I met. Not her though, lol. I think you misread the title of this post. She asked me if I ever killed anybody when I was in the war. When I asked if it mattered, she made a big deal of it. Was I wrong? Nope. I think it's in bad taste to ask a veteran that question. Ever, really, let alone on a first date. This Korean guy took me out and went to a lot of trouble to plan a great date. We had a lot of fun. He contacted me again but I never got back to him. Looking back, he didn't hit on me at all and was really nice. I was into guys who treated me like crap, so I was kinda in shock and didn't know what to do with a great dude. I'm sorry, Korean David, if you're out there. I'm Vietnamese and will treat you like crap, hit me up. Only petty because he really was a nice guy. I once went on a date with a guy I was in college with. We had gone to the same high school but had never really talked before, so I had no idea how weird he really was. Long story short, the date was super awkward. He revealed to me that at 21 years old he had never been out with a girl, friend or otherwise. He would put his arm around me every time he had the chance, but would put about 6 inches of space between us when doing so, and when he dropped me off at my house he tried to kiss me, missed and pretty much gave me a wet willy with his mouth. He asked me out again and when I politely declined, he cried and asked me why I had led him on in the first place if I never really intended to fully date him. That ending makes it not petty at all. Claiming you led him on because you didn't want a second date is really not a good sign. He looked nothing like his photos and was generally odd looking. I couldn't get over this weak chin. And then he tried to get me drunk at 5 PM without food, followed me to my apartment and tried to come in because he said I owed him. He recently found me on another stupid dating site. You look crazy familiar. I didn't reply. Sounds like you dodged a bullet. I went on a date with a guy once who I hit it off with perfectly. We laughed a ton, had maintained a lot of contact prior to the date, and everything was going well. After the date he completely cut me off, never to speak to me again. After a couple of weeks I asked our mutual friend, who set us up, what was up. He couldn't get over the fact that I paid for the date. He traveled around an hour to get to me and pick me up to take me out locally. I thought it was the least I could do. Dude's got issues. Not exactly petty, but she was a single mother. I knew this going into the first date. She was very open about it, but for some reason it didn't bother me until the date ended. There was definitely some chemistry there, but I was afraid of getting too close to her. She asked when we were hanging out again and I was completely honest with her. She said she respected that, but I knew it must have hurt. She's married now and we still talk from time to time. Good on you for being upfront. I'm sure she appreciated it on the long run, even if it stung a bit at the time. I'd make a comment and he'd respond, yeah, every single time. I eventually turned it into a game of sorts and every time he'd ask, I would reply, yeah. She wanted to take the lift instead of walking down a short flight of stairs. That and she complained that the anti-corruption drive in China had taken away her family's chauffeured car. He told me that he believed the Kardashians embody the American dream and that everyone should strive to be like them. Before that conversation I thought I might be in love with him. As soon as he said that, my vagina was like I could never possibly be wet for this person again. Vaginas don't lie. She though the police covered Puff Daddy. I put a mix CD on and it had Every Breath on it. She thought they ripped off Puff Daddy's tribute to Biggie. I sincerely hope that, somewhere in this thread, there will be a woman whose petty reason is that he put a song about stalking a lover on a mix CD, and it was a cover of a better song to boot. She called me the Coca-Cola kid because I got water instead of Pepsi. She only said it once but it annoyed me so I never called her back. She sounds hilarious. She asked if I wanted tea. I said yes. She filled the cup with water and put it in the microwave. She served me the tea and the water was lukewarm. Who does this? British eye twitching and tutting. I found out that she had once dated a guy I knew. This guy was such a colossally smarmy douchebag that I couldn't stomach the idea of dating someone who had once dated him. As soon as I found out, I was immediately mentally and emotionally uninterested in her, which, in turn, made the sex less enjoyable. Lumberg. She said she didn't understand why I wasn't agreeing that Star Wars was the most boring movie series of all time. She told me about a time she got spit roasted by two guys, took one to the beach bar and the barback was acting a bit off, and she had such a lack of tact she asked the bartender what was wrong with his partner, like why is he acting so freaking weird. He told her he had autism. She then tried to give the guy $5 like he was a homeless dude with a pitying look on her face. I almost shoved my whole face in my glass of Johnny Walker to hide. When I offered to pay for the meal at our first date, he rolled his eyes and said, "Oh no, I couldn't let that happen. Of course the guy will pay." I had the distinct impression he thought I was bluffing to seem different than other girls and wanted him to pay all along. Thing was, I was serious, and that single moment told me he had underlying issues about women I wasn't ready to mess with. No second date for him, and he suckered himself into paying $30 he didn't have to pay. For further clarification, I insisted 2 more times I'd pay but he continued to insist in clear irritation until I shrugged and let him have it. Yeah, this crap gets me too. First thing some guys bring up when we talk about equality is the social pressure for them to pay and how they hate it. Her dog was really aggressive when I showed up to pick her up. I actually like dogs a lot, but her dog was kind of crappy, and I'd have to deal with her crappy dog a lot if we hit it off. IDK if the dog really annoyed you and you would have to deal with it a lot. I wouldn't think it's petty. She was rude to the bartender at both bars we went to, and she wasn't even paying. I mean, I did take her home but we didn't have a second date because that's where I draw the line. Fair enough. Hit it and quit it. She ate all the bread you get before the meal arrives. I wanted some of the bread, deleted her number and blocked her when I got home. This girl always talked in this weird cutesy language like she was talking to a baby, making up gibberish words all the time like shmi and mispronouncing words like a first grader would. Plus she tried texting me constantly and typed like a 14-year-old girl with a flip phone. I took her out on a lunch date once because she was actually pretty cute but couldn't listen to her speak for more than 10 minutes. She was 20. He told me he likes to wear women's panties. I feel like I could be okay with that. It's just not a first date topic. Def wait till the second or third for the big reveal. It's fairly petty, I guess. She was the most plain person I've ever met. She looked very plain, though her face was the most circular face I've ever seen. Her favorite shows were Family Guy and The Office. I got the idea she didn't really watch anything else. Her go-to drink was an Amaretto and Coke. We were at a craft cocktail bar. She was a nice girl, but very plain. I hope she finds a bologna to her white bread. Still, it's sweet of you to hope her the best. She clearly wasn't what you were looking for and I think that's okay. He was super ashy. He was wearing pants that were too short so his ashy ankles were on full display. His elbows were ashy, as well as the space between his thumb and pointer finger, and his knuckles. This was summer. How can you come out the house this ashy for a date? On top of that, his fingernails were dirty and that was really off-putting. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.